Welcome aboard the galactic cruise liner Celestial Serendipity, where every moment is an adventure. The cheerful holographic greeter flickered to life, its smile stretching wide, almost as vast as a black hole's event horizon. Enjoy your stay and remember, if you die, it's not our fault you signed the waiver. Bryce Malloy, a gelatinous blob from the planet Blob, yes, really, gurgled appreciatively at the greeter's enthusiasm. It was their first time leaving their world, and they were determined to make the most of it. Plus, being a sentient puddle had its perks. What's the worst that could happen? Evaporation? Bryce Malloy oozed their way down the pristine corridors, taking in the eclectic mix of beings from all over the galaxy. There were the usual bipeds and quadrupeds, and even a few creatures that defied the laws of geometry. But what truly caught Bryce Malloy's attention, well, what passed for attention in a being without eyes, was a group of strangely shaped creatures huddled around a viewing port. Curiosity piqued, Bryce Malloy slithered closer, careful not to startle anyone. The last time they'd done that, half the crew of their transport ship needed shock treatment apparently. Not everyone appreciated a surprise greeting from a talking puddle. "I'm telling you, it's impossible," one of the creatures, a tall, willowy being with marble-like skin, was saying, gesturing wildly with its 7 arms. "No sapient species could evolve on such a planet." "But the data doesn't lie," another being, resembling a sentient fern, rustled in response. "The scans are clear," it continued. "It's a Class 12 death world and it's teeming with life." Bryce Malloy, ever the opportunist and avid eavesdropper, decided to join the conversation. "Excuse me," they bubbled, causing the group to jump back in surprise. "Sorry about that. Still working on my entrance. But did I hear you say Class 12 Death World? I thought those were just myths." The marble-skinned being, whom Bryce Malloy learned was called Theo Flint, looked down at them with a mix of fascination and mild disgust. Ophira. How quaint. Yes, we were just discussing the impossible planet before us." Bryce Malloy turned their attention back to the viewing port. Well, their version of attention, which was more like a general shift in blob consciousness, and saw the planet floating serenely in the inky blackness of space. It seemed to defy logic. Swirling white clouds obscured parts of its surface, revealing tantalizing glimpses of blue and green beneath. Angry red spots dotted its landscape, spewing liquid rock into the air. "By the great coagulation," Bryce Malloy whispered in awe. "What is this place?" The sentient fern, identified as Dr. Lyle Birch, who apparently had a penchant for literal naming, waved a leafy appendage toward the planet. "This, my gelatinous friend, is what the natives call Earth. Can you believe it? They named their death trap of a planet after dirt." Sillerith, another member of the group, snorted a sound like a vacuum cleaner choking on a sock. "If I didn't know better, I'd say this was some sort of cosmic joke. Look at it. The gravitational pull alone should make complex life impossible. And don't even get me started on the atmospheric composition." Dr. Lyle Birch nodded sagely, his leaves rustling in agreement. Indeed, the oxygen levels alone would cause most species to spontaneously combust, and yet somehow life not only survives, but thrives there. Bryce Malloy, ever the optimist, something that had nearly gotten them recycled back on Blob for being disruptively cheerful, bubbled excitedly. "But isn't that fascinating? Think of the adaptations, the sheer tenacity required to evolve in such conditions." A new voice joined the conversation. It belonged to a being that looked like a cross between a sea pod and a disco ball. "Oh, honey, you ain't seen nothing yet," it said, its tentacles flashing in rhythmic patterns that would put any rave to shame. "I'm Captain Solomon Reef, and I've been studying this little ball of insanity for cycles." Bryce Malloy, Theo Flint, and Dr. Lyle Birch turned their attention to the newcomer, intrigued. "Captain?" Theo Flint asked, his tone a mixture of respect and skepticism. "Surely you can't mean to tell us that this aberration of a planet actually supports sapient life?" Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed, perhaps in what was the sea pod equivalent of a smirk. "Support it, darling? It practically breeds it. The dominant species calls themselves humans, and let me tell you, they're as crazy as the rock they live on." Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves quivered with excitement. "Truly? But how?" The conditions are absolutely bonkers. I know, Captain Solomon Reef replied, his tentacles flashing with glee. But these humans, they don't just survive, they thrive, and the best part? They have no idea how special they are. Bryce Malloy, who had been quietly absorbing all this information, literally, they'd grown a few centimeters from the sheer volume of new data, finally spoke up. Can you tell us more about these humans? Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed in a dazzling array of colors. Oh, honey, I thought you'd never ask. Gather round, kiddos, it's story time. As the small group huddled closer, Bryce Malloy being careful not to accidentally absorb anyone, Captain Solomon Reef began his tale. First things first, he said, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. Earth isn't just a Class 12 death world. That's what the official Galactic Federation classification says. But between you and me, it's more like a 13, maybe even a 14. Theo Flint, marble-like skin now paling visibly, gasped. But that's impossible! The scale only goes up to 12. Exactly, Captain Solomon Reef said, his tentacles flashing with what might have been glee. These humans are so badass they broke the scale. Let me give you a little rundown of what makes Earth so special. For starters, gravity. Earth's gravity is so strong most species would be crushed under their own weight. But humans? They use it to get buff. They literally pick up heavy things and put them down again for fun. Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves drooped in disbelief. Surely you jest? I wish I was, my chlorophyll-filled friend, Captain Solomon Reef replied. But it gets better. Remember that oxygen-rich atmosphere I mentioned? The one that should cause spontaneous combustion? Humans breathe it all day, every day. And when that's not extreme enough for them, some of them climb to the tops of mountains where there's less of it. Just for kicks. Bryce Malloy gurgled in amazement. That's incredible, but surely their planet can't be that inhospitable all over. Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed in what might have been a chuckle. Oh, you sweet summer blob. Earth doesn't do anything by halves. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a planet where molten rock occasionally bursts from the ground, spewing toxic gases and ash into the air, where the very continents themselves are constantly moving, causing catastrophic earthquakes, where swirling vortexes of wind and water can level entire cities. Theo Flint interrupted, eagerly waiting for more. His voice trembled slightly as Captain Solomon Reef continued. You mean all of those things actually happen on Earth? Yes, dear Theo Flint, Captain Solomon Reef answered casually. They happen all the time. Volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes. These are just the everyday realities for humans, and do you know how they deal with them? The group leaned in, captivated despite themselves. They rebuild their cities every time, the captain said, sometimes right on top of the old ones. They look at a mountain that's literally spitting out molten rock and think, this looks like a cozy place to settle down. They see a coastline that gets pummeled by storms and call it prime real estate. Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves seem to twist with stress just imagining it. But why? Why would any intelligent species willingly live under such circumstances? Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed, almost as if shrugging. Because they can, because it's there, because humans have looked at the universe and collectively said, bring it on. Bryce Malloy, still bubbling with excitement, finally spoke up. But surely, even with all these environmental hazards, the local fauna can't be that deadly, can they? The captain's tentacles froze suddenly, and for a brief moment, it seemed like they caught a flicker of fear in his glowing patterns. Oh, my sweet summer child, Captain Solomon Reef whispered, his voice dropping low. Let me tell you about Australian wildlife. For the next hour, Captain Solomon Reef spun tales of Earth's wildlife, leaving the group alternating between awe, horror, and utter disbelief. He talked about hippos capable of snapping a small spacecraft in half, octopi so poisonous they could kill a human with a single bite, and birds that could mimic any sound they heard, including chainsaws and car alarms. And then there were the insects. They have these creatures called bullet ants. Captain Solomon Reef shuddered, his tentacles quivering. Their sting feels like you've been shot. And don't get me started on the murder hornets. They'll kill you just because they woke up and felt like it. Theo Flint, whose marble-like skin had taken on a faintly greenish hue, murmured something about needing to lie down. Dr. Lyle Birch, on the other hand, appeared fascinated. But surely with all these dangers, humans must have developed incredible defense systems, force fields, personal shields, the works. Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed with what could have been a sea-pod laugh. Oh, you'd think so, wouldn't you? But no. Humans' best defense against all these threats? Hubris and a leather jacket. Bryce Malloy, who had been quietly absorbing the conversation, growing a few more centimeters in the process, finally spoke up again. But how? How did they become the dominant species on such a chaotic planet? Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles sparked in a dazzling display of color. Ah, now that's the real kicker. You see, humans didn't just survive Earth, they thrived because of it. He waved a tentacle towards the viewing port, where Earth continued spinning calmly in the vast emptiness of space. All those dangers aren't glitches in the system. They're features. Every challenge Earth throws at humans, they rise to meet it. It gets too cold, they invent fire. Too hot? Air conditioning. Predators try to eat them. They domesticate wolves and turn them into creatures called dogs, which they dress up in silly outfits and talk to in baby voices. Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves twitched with interest. So their harsh environment drove their technological progress? Bingo! Walking salad! Captain Solomon Reef grinned, his tentacles lighting up with pride. But it's more than just that. Earth didn't just make humans tough, it made them creative, resourceful, and perhaps most terrifyingly, curious. Theo Flint, who had begun to recover from the earlier shock, raised an eyebrow, or something that served as one on a being made of living marble. Curious? How is that terrifying? Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed in a way that almost looked like a smirk. Because my calcium carbonate friend, human curiosity knows no bounds. They look at the deepest oceans, the tallest mountains, the empty void of space and think, what's out there? He paused for dramatic effect, his tentacles glowing brighter as he added, and then they go and find out. The group fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Bryce Malloy, ever the optimist, was the first to speak. But isn't that wonderful? A species so driven to explore, to learn. Oh, it's wonderful, all right, Captain Solomon Reef replied, his tone suddenly darkening. It's also terrifying. You have to understand, humans don't just explore, they conquer. Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves drooped in shock. You mean they're aggressive? Aggressive? Captain Solomon Reef's laugh tinkled like a bell. Humans make most aggressive species look like pacifists. But here's the thing. They're not mindlessly violent. They're competitive with everything. Theo Flint frowned, clearly confused. I don't understand. Let me break it down for you, Captain Solomon Reef explained. Humans will see a mountain and think, I bet I can climb that. They'll see an ocean and think, I bet I can cross that. They'll look at the vast, empty expanse of space and think, you know what? This place needs more humans. The captain's tentacles flashed rapidly. And the crazy part? More often than not, they succeed. Because when humans set their minds to something, they don't stop until they've done it, or they've died trying. Sometimes both. Bryce Malloy, who had been absorbing all this new information and growing steadily in size, finally spoke up again. But surely, with all this drive and curiosity, they must have made incredible technological advancements? Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles sparkled in what might have been a grin. Oh, you have no idea. Let me tell you about something humans call the internet. For the next hour, Captain Solomon Reef told the group all about Earth's technological marvels, leaving them in turns impressed, stunned, and occasionally horrified. So let me get this straight, Theo Flint said, furrowing his marble brow in concentration. Humans created a global network that allows instant communication and access to all of their species' knowledge, and they use it mostly to argue with strangers, look at pictures of small, furry animals, and share videos of themselves doing dangerous stunts for imaginary points. Captain Solomon Reef added cheerfully, Don't forget that part. Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves rustled, almost as if sighing. It's almost disappointing, given their potential. Oh, don't get me wrong, Captain Solomon Reef interrupted. Humans have done incredible things with their technology. They've cured diseases, explored the ocean depths, and even sent some of their own kind to the moon, just for fun, mind you. No real reason, They just wanted to see if they could. Bryce Malloy, now growing to the size of a small car and practically buzzing with excitement, bubbled, "That's amazing! With such accomplishments, they must be a peaceful, unified species, right?" The silence that followed was so deep it seemed to absorb even the hum of the ship's engines. For a brief moment, the group fell silent, the hum of the ship's engines the only sound filling the air. Then, Captain Solomon Reef's voice broke the stillness, unusually solemn. "Ah, my gelatinous friend, if only it were that simple." He turned back toward the viewing port, his tentacles pulsating with soft, muted colors. "You see, for all their incredible feats and potential, humans have one fatal flaw. They can never seem to agree on anything. And when I say anything, I mean it." Silth raised an eyebrow. "Surely they must agree on some things. Basic truths about their world, perhaps?" Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flickered, possibly in a dry laugh. "Oh, you sweet summer child. Let me tell you about something humans call conspiracy theories." What followed was a whirlwind tour through human irrationality that left the alien observers in alternating states of shock, laughter, disbelief, and existential dread. "So," Dr. Lyle Birch said, his leaves quivering in a mixture of concern and amusement, "you're telling us that despite all evidence to the contrary, some humans believe their planet is flat?" Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed in confirmation. "Oh, that's just scratching the surface, my photosynthesizing friend. Some humans believe that their leaders are secretly reptilian aliens. Others think the contrails left by their primitive flying machines are actually chemicals to control their minds. And don't even get me started on the ones who believe their moon landings were staged." Theo Flint's marble-like features twisted, possibly into a frown. But why? Why would they choose to believe such obviously false ideas? Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flickered with a soft, almost melancholic light. "That, my friends, is the eternal mystery. Some say it's a coping mechanism for the chaos of their world. Others think it's because of their insatiable need to find patterns, even where none exist. Personally, I think humans simply love a good story." Bryce Malloy, unusually quiet and mercifully no longer expanding, finally spoke up. "But surely, with all their technological progress, they must have found a way to combat misinformation." Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flickered again, this time in a dark laugh. "Oh, they've tried. They have fact-checkers, educational programs, entire organizations dedicated to promoting scientific knowledge. But here's the real kicker. The same technology that gives them access to all the world's knowledge also lets them find echo chambers that reinforce their beliefs, no matter how outlandish." Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves drooped visibly. "It sounds like a losing battle." "You'd think so, wouldn't you?" Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles lit up with new energy. "But here's the thing about humans. Just when you think they're about to give up, they do something that surprises you." He turned back to the viewing port, his gaze locked on the distant blue marble. "For every human who thinks the moon is made of cheese, there's another who's working tirelessly to understand the mysteries of the cosmos. For every flat earther, there's a geologist digging through the ancient history of their planet." Theo Flint tilted his head, his crystalline structure catching the light. "It sounds chaotic." "Oh, it is," Captain Solomon Reef agreed. "But that chaos, that's their secret weapon." The group leaned in, more intrigued than ever. "You see," the captain continued, his voice now almost reverent, "humans don't just survive chaos. They thrive in it. They take disparate ideas, clash them together, and somehow come up with something new, something revolutionary." He swept a tentacle toward the planet below. "Look at their art, their music, their literature. It's a jumble of influences, each piece drawing from the others, creating something completely fresh in the process. Their greatest works often emerge from the most tumultuous times in their history." Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves perked up. "Fascinating. So their disagreements actually drive their progress?" "Bingo, walking salad," Captain Solomon Reef said, his tentacles flashing with pride. "Humans have a saying, 'Necessity is the mother of invention.' But for them, disagreement is the father. They argue, they debate, they fight, sometimes literally. But in doing so, they innovate." Bryce Malloy, who had been quietly absorbing all of this and thankfully stopped growing any further, finally bubbled with excitement. That's incredible. So they just keep going no matter the odds? Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed with pride. Exactly, my gelatinous friend, and that's what makes them so unstoppable. Bryce Malloy, still pondering the conversation, finally spoke up. It sounds inspiring, but in a terrifying way. Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flickered in agreement. That's humanity for you. Terrifyingly inspiring and inspiringly terrifying in equal measure. They look at the impossible and say, "Hold my beer." The group exchanged puzzled glances. "Ah, sorry," the captain said, his tentacles pulsing with amusement. "That's a human idiom. It essentially means, 'Watch this, I'm about to do something wildly foolish and/or amazing.'" Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves rustled with what might have been a chuckle. "I think I'm starting to understand how they've survived on such a lethal planet. They're as unpredictable as their world." "Exactly," Captain Solomon Reef shouted, his tentacles lighting up with excitement. But here's the real kicker. They're not just satisfied with surviving their death world. They want to take that chaotic energy to the stars. Theo Flint's crystalline features contorted, possibly into a frown. "You don't mean—" "Oh, but I do," Captain Solomon Reef said, lowering his voice to an almost conspiratorial tone. "Humans aren't just planning to explore space, they're planning to colonize it, to terraform entire planets, to spread their particular brand of chaos throughout the galaxy." The group fell silent, the weight of the implications sinking in. "But that's impossible," Dr. Lyle Birch sputtered, his leaves quivering in disbelief. "The resources needed, the technological advancements, the sheer audacity." Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed in what could have been a grin. "Exactly. It's impossible. It's insane. It's so far beyond their current capabilities that it practically qualifies as fantasy. And that, my chlorophyll friend, is exactly why they're going to do it." Bryce Malloy bubbled with excitement. "Because it's a challenge." "Bingo, you gelatinous genius," Captain Solomon Reef said with approval. "Humans don't just rise to challenges. They actively seek them out. The more impossible something seems, the more determined they become to make it happen." He gestured toward Earth, his tentacles tracing glowing patterns in the air. "Look at their history. Flight was considered impossible until they made it happen. Space travel was a dream until they decided to shoot for the moon. They've cured diseases that once wiped out millions, split the atom, unraveled the human genome, all because someone somewhere said, 'I wonder if we could.'" Theo Flint shook his head, his crystalline structure reflecting the light. "It sounds chaotic, unpredictable." "Oh, it absolutely is," Captain Solomon Reef agreed. "But that's what makes humans so fascinating. They don't just embrace chaos, they weaponize it." The group leaned in closer, intrigued. "You see," the captain continued, his voice almost reverent, "humans have this remarkable ability to thrive under uncertainty. They adapt, they improvise, they overcome. Where other species see problems, humans see opportunities." Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves rustled thoughtfully. "It almost sounds like evolution in real time." Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flickered in approval. "Exactly. Humans aren't just a product of evolution. They're active participants in it. They're constantly pushing themselves to be faster, stronger, smarter, and when their biology can't keep up, they create technology to supplement it." Bryce Malloy bubbled curiously. "Technology like spaceships and computers?" "Oh, that's just the beginning," Captain Solomon Reef said, his tentacles pulsing with excitement. "Humans are on the brink of merging with their technology. They're developing artificial limbs controlled by thought, chips that can be implanted in the brain, and nanobots capable of repairing cells from the inside out." Theo Flint's crystalline features twisted into what might have been a frown. "But isn't that dangerous? Playing with the very essence of what makes them human?" Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flickered in what might have been a smirk. "Now you're getting it. Of course it's dangerous, incredibly dangerous. But here's the thing about humans. They're not afraid to change what they are. In fact, they're eager to do so." He turned back to the viewing port, his gaze distant. "There's a human philosophy called transhumanism. The basic idea is that humanity can, and should, use technology to evolve beyond their current physical and mental limitations. Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves rustled with a mixture of awe and concern. They want to change their very nature, alter it, improve it, transcend it completely? Captain Solomon Reef nodded. They're not content being the apex predator on their death world. They want to be something more, something that doesn't just survive in the harshest environments the universe can throw at them, but thrives in them. Bryce Malloy, who had been quiet for some time, finally spoke up. It sounds beautiful in a terrifying kind of way. Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles pulsed in agreement. That's humans for you. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. They dream of becoming gods, of reshaping reality itself to their will. And the scary part? They might just pull it off. He gestured toward Earth, his tentacles painting intricate patterns of light in the air. In the cosmic blink of an eye, they've gone from hiding in caves to standing on the cusp of becoming an interplanetary species. They've taken the harsh lessons of their death world and transformed them into a blueprint for conquering the stars. Theo Flint frowned, his crystalline structure catching the light. But what does this mean for the rest of us, for the galaxy? Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles went still for a moment, and a shadow seemed to pass over his bioluminescent patterns. Ah, he said softly. Now we come to the heart of the matter. The group leaned in closer, captivated. The truth is, Captain Solomon Reef continued, his voice growing serious, we don't know. Humans are an X factor, a wild card in the cosmic deck. They could be the greatest allies the galaxy has ever known, bringing their indomitable spirit and boundless creativity to solve problems that have puzzled other species for millennia. He paused, his tentacles pulsing with a soft, almost melancholic light. Or, he said quietly, they could be the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced. A species forged in the fires of a death world, driven by an unrelenting curiosity and an unshakable belief in their own destiny. Armed with technology they barely understand. The group fell silent, the weight of the words hanging heavily in the air. Finally, Bryce Malloy spoke, their gelatinous form quivering with a mixture of excitement and concern. So what do we do? Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles suddenly lit up in a dazzling array of colors. We watch, we wait, and most importantly, we learn. He turned back to the viewing port, his gaze fixed on the distant blue marble. Because here's the thing about humans. For all their potential for destruction, for all their capacity for violence and hatred, they have an even greater capacity for something else. The group exchanged confused glances. You see, Captain Solomon Reef said, his voice soft but firm, they care. The captain's voice softened, taking on a tone of reverence. Humans, you see, don't just survive. They don't simply adapt, they care. They peer into the vast, cold void of space, at the indifferent cosmos that gave birth to them, and they choose to fill it with meaning, with art, with music, with stories, with dreams, and with hopes for a better tomorrow. He motioned toward Earth, his tentacles weaving luminous patterns in the air. They're not content with just understanding the universe. They long to shape it, to leave their mark, to make the cosmos a little brighter, a little kinder, a little more human. Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves rustled in contemplation. It sounds almost beautiful. It is, Captain Solomon Reef agreed, his tentacles glowing with a soft, warm light. Terrifying? Yes. Dangerous? Absolutely. But beautiful beyond words. He turned fully to face the group, his bioluminescent patterns shifting into what could only be described as a smile. So, my friends, what do you think? Are you ready to watch history unfold? To witness the rise of a species that may one day reshape the very essence of the cosmos? Bryce Malloy bubbled excitedly. Count me in! Dr. Lyle Birch's leaves perked up, a thoughtful expression on his face. It would be fascinating to observe their adaptations. Theo Flint, despite his earlier skepticism, found himself nodding. I suppose someone has to keep an eye on them. Captain Solomon Reef's tentacles flashed with approval. Excellent. Then let's settle in and watch the show, because trust me, with humans in the mix, it's going to be one wild ride. As the group turned back to the viewing port, their eyes fixed on the small blue marble spinning serenely in the void, they felt a curious blend of excitement, apprehension, and awe. For there, on that humble planet, a species was preparing to take its first tentative steps into the galactic community. A species forged by the fires of a death world, tempered by adversity, driven by a relentless curiosity and an unwavering spirit. Humanity was on its way, and the universe would never be the same again.